Hi everyone. Today I'm going to return to 1972 and continue on with the crime movies of 1972, of which there were many. And today I'm going to talk about The Getaway. And this is a Sam Peckinpah movie starring Steve McQueen, Ali MacGraw, from a screenplay by Walter Hill. I think this is only his second screenplay, and of course he would go on to become a director of films that whose narratives are very close to Sam Peckinpah himself. And The Getaway is the story of a heist, a bungled heist, full of double crossings, full of possible triple crossings. It centers around a character that Steve McQueen plays called Doc McCoy, and he is in prison. He's sick of being imprisoned. So he is able to gain a early parole through the efforts of his wife to get to one of the parole board members, a very corrupt man. He's undefined in the screenplay, but some sort of crime boss. But he's sitting on the parole board as well. And this is played by Ben Johnson. And so Ali MacGraw, playing Carol, Doc's wife, goes to, although we never see it, it's presumed that she seduces him into letting him go because he has a plan for a big time robbery. So the film then, as the heist is bungled in the opening sequences, it's a story about a getaway, and it's Doc and Carol are being pursued by the police and by fellow thieves, and Doc is very inventive. He knows how to sort of improvise his way out of every situation that comes up. And there's a couple of great sequences in the getaway itself. The final shootout in the hotel room is a beautiful example of Peckinpah's choreographed violence. But there's a quiet sequence that I think is the best sequence in the movie, and that is when Carol is conned out of this bag of $500 million by a con man. She doesn't even realize it's been stolen, and then Doc has to find a way to get the money back as the con man is going off on a train. It's also a story about marriage, the ups and downs. This is very much, there's tender moments when Doc gets out of jail. There's violent moments because how far did the wife go with this seduction? And there is chemistry, obvious chemistry between McQueen and MacGraw, because in real life they fell in love with each other during the filming of the movie, and were married for 5 or 6 years afterwards. And at the time, Ali MacGraw was married to Robert Evans, the head of Paramount Pictures. When Ali MacGraw went off to make the movie, I think she was gone for something like 3 months, and Robert Evans never came to visit her. He was totally absorbed 24/7 with the post-production of The Godfather during these months. So, the chemistry, the idea that that we know because it was a big celebrity event in the tabloids of the 1970s. Especially Steve McQueen stealing away Robert Evans, one of the most powerful people in Hollywood. But there's also elements of Peckinpah, the choreographed violence I've already mentioned, but his misogyny, and his Peckinpah's misogyny, and I'm noting what many critics of Peckinpah have noted throughout his filmography, is really the stupidity of women, and we get a prime example here in a subplot that that involves Sally Struthers. Yes, Sally Struthers from All in the Family, And it's really a distasteful sequence. I mean, it's really hard to sit through, and it's only made bearable because Sally Struthers is so good in the part. I mean, she is just, you would never think that it's the same girl from All in the Family. She had some really good acting ability as she did, of course, in her TV series as well. But the film was meant to be a very commercial film. Peckinpah did it because he thought he would have a hit. He needed a hit. And Peckinpah and McQueen had made a film that also released in 1972 called Junior Bonner. It was a big flop, but both McQueen and Peckinpah thought were really, and justifiably so, proud of the movie, and they thought it was marketing. And, you know, so McQueen goes back to his kind of like cool style of professional, the bullet McQueen, the McQueen that the audiences would like. But this is so different here. This is the novel by Jim Thompson, The Getaway. Jim Thompson was, Eddie Muller says that Jim Thompson was the greatest of all the noir novelists, and he differentiates noir from the private detective noir. This is all crime. There's no private detective here in Jim Thompson's novels, which are wild and nihilistic and dark and funny. I mean, absurdly funny. And in the book, I've already mentioned that Doc McCoy is an honorable thief, and he doesn't kill unless he has to, much to his own safety. In the book, Doc McCoy is a psychopathic killer, as is his wife, Carol. This is a totally different world, but I would have to say that as far as the screenplay goes, Walter Hill, as far as the plot and the incidents that are good in the film, they come from the novel. Now, there is a sequence in a garbage truck that I don't believe was in the film, or that was in the novel. And also the novel ends just utterly bizarre. It's sort of like Kafka. And the getaway couple are trying to get to Mexico, but Peckinpah, and I think Peckinpah, I'm not sure if it was in the original screenplay, but it's a totally different ending. And it's sort of like, you know, well, I won't tell you what it's about because some of you, I'm sure, have never seen the film. But, you know, and we get a commentary from Nick Pinkerton with 3 biographers of Peckinpah. There's a lot of literature written on Sam Peckinpah, and it's really good commentary. And we learn that this was a Steve McQueen movie. This was a vehicle for Steve McQueen. It was his production company. He was heavily involved in the final edit, but he also, at the last minute, replaced the score. The score is by Jerry Fielding, who was a close friend of Peckinpah. Peckinpah lived a nomadic kind of life, but he would camp out sometimes at Jerry Fielding's house, and Fielding had written the scores for other Peckinpah movies, including The Wild Bunch. And Sam was devastated, and Jerry Fielding really devastated, because he thought there was a fine, that both Peckinpah and Fielding were very happy with that score. For some reason, McQueen was not, and he replaced it with a score by Quincy Jones. So we also, in the supplements, get an interview with Jerry Fielding's widow and with Sam Peckinpah's companion for many years through the filming of The Getaway and other films, but they have some great memories. Peckinpah was one of the most outrageously unique people there ever was in Hollywood films, and that's saying a lot. So we get a good portrait of Peckinpah in these interviews, and we also. And I have to mention the Peckinpah stock company of supporting players that are scattered throughout his filmography. And here in The Getaway, we'll get Dub Taylor, we'll get Bo Hoskins, and Slim Pickens. Slim Pickens, one of top 10 all-time supporting actors of all time. And he comes in at the end, and he is just, I think Peckinpah had him improvise his lines. He says, someone will come up with something really good here, and he sure did. And then there is the question of violence in Peckinpah, and I've never been a big fan of violence in movies, explicit violence in movies, and I've always been sort of perplexed at the way that the critics treat violence in Peckinpah's movies. It's meaningful, and Peckinpah means this. He needs us to see the horror of violence, and yet it seemed like the audiences was enjoying the balletic violence in the Wild Bunch. It was a form of entertainment. I've never grasped that audiences, maybe some of Peckinpah's biographers do, but that audiences really, this was great action scenery, sequences. So I picked up a book on Peckinpah by Stephen Prince, who is he's not one of the biographers in the commentary. Savage Cinema, Sam Peckinpah and the Rise of Ultra-Violent Movies by Stephen Prince. And I did a series on Masaki Kobayashi last year, and I relied on his biography of Kobayashi to help me navigate through the films of Kobayashi. So I thought if anybody can convince me of Sam Peckinpah as more than just a genre filmmaker, a very effective genre filmmaker, Prince would be the one, because I am going to be rewatching Straw Dogs, which has some of Peckinpah's ultra-violence in it. And Stephen Prince actually does the commentary for this. So, he passed away just last year, I think, and he was one of the great film scholars, I think, of the last part of the 20th century. Okay, so thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen. I love to get comments. I respond to them all. You guys take care.